Start.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, welcome, Bret. Good to see you. Good to hear from you,
Yeah.
Denise. And we're talking about new Earth nomads and what we can do as being nomads and what the new Earth means, what modern nomad means. And also, I specifically want to ask you about spiritual emergencies. But let's go back into what nomad means and what the new means in your opinion, in either order.
In my opinion, well, we used to actually. Did you want to say something? Yeah.
No, I'm going to put you on mute though. I mean,
Okay. Well, we used to actually call ourselves around here nomads, NOOMADS, because we were working on our prototype software called NewMap, based on the idea of the noosphere, which is sort of the thinking layer, the proposed thinking layer around the Earth. So you have the biosphere and the hydrosphere, and then you have the noosphere, which is the mind layer or the consciousness, etc. And people like Jose Arguelles of the Mayan calendar fame made that popular, and Barbara Marx Hubbard used to talk about it a lot in terms of um, I can't say his name right. The French Jesuit priest in the 1920s, who was one of the people who coined the word, the noosphere. So, and the reason I'm bringing that up is because as travelers around the planet, or maybe who knows, really travelers in consciousness, it it seemed sort of appropriate in a sense to call ourselves nomads because we weren't only traversing and journeying through the physical land, we were also transversing the mental space and the psychological space and the spiritual space and consciousness itself. So um, the reason I'm saying that is because for me, that's what a modern nomad is about, so to say, or postmodern maybe is even more appropriate. Nomad, it's people who are travelers. Number one, I think we like to move, right? We like to keep things dynamic and like to see new things and experience new people and new places. I think for many people, it keeps our creativity fresh, and I think it, in some senses, it supports synchronicity. To keep moving and to meet new people and have these new experiences also actually catalyzes synchronicity and flow. And in that sense, that's what a global or new earth nomad means to me. It's people who are traveling the planet physically, but also traveling the mimetic space and the creative space. Um, and most of us are doing it through a deep inner calling. To pursue our passions or follow our bliss and create things that are really in service to a brighter, better world or to humanity. So I'll stop there. I mean, a lot of things, but that's the picture. That's the picture I feel when I think of a new nomad. And oh, I'll throw one more thing in, which is fun because I like to plug and share about my friends. So in 2010, I saw this guy named Michael Sky call himself a visionary troubadour, and I wish I could just recite it off the top of my head, but he had this beautiful paragraph of what a visionary troubadour was. And basically, it was something like a person who lives in the gift economy and goes from place to place, pollinating the world with new ideas and serving and being helped and living in amazing places and hardly ever paying for food or accommodation because they're part of a deep trust network of generosity and creativity. So, really, he was the first person I saw name that, and he got it from a friend named Sean actually. And I met him in person. He happened to be near me in Pennsylvania at the time when I was living in New Jersey. And I have to be honest, that really catalyzed my last decade of actually being a new type of nomad. And that my word for that has been visionary troubadour. You know, troubadours go around kind of playing their music and bringing their gifts. So, yeah, a new earth nomad's a visionary troubadour for me.
super cool. I love the explanation. Also, can you tell a little bit about your travels in the last 10 years and of your visionary troubadourness as a new earth nomad or a new nomad?
Yeah. So I started out in 2011 really. So I met this guy in around 2010. I went to something called Awesomeness Fest in Costa Rica also in 2010 by a guy that was organized by a guy named Vishen Lakiani, who's the sort of CEO of something called Mind Valley, a digital transformation publishing company on the internet now. They're quite famous and big now. They were kind of starting out, I think, around that. And he had this vision of bringing people together to awesome locations and having them network and do personal transformation together. And just this small group of people, a tribe. And he called it Awesomeness Fest. So I went to that in 2010. I kind of emptied my credit cards and said, I feel like I need to be at this event. And I had been quite depressed for a while. I was living, which is part of a larger story. I was living by myself in an apartment and working through a lot of years of being diagnosed with bipolar disorder and having that experience. So around then, I realized I needed to get out of my state-sponsored apartment and my little bit of money I was taking from the government, what they call supplemental security income in the U.S. And it was dawning on me at that I was about 36 or 37 at the time that if I didn't change something, if I didn't take more risks or get out of my patterns, I might just end up in this apartment by myself for the rest of my life, and that's not really what I wanted. So, so I made some new friends. They came to visit me in a big school bus. My friends, this guy named Freeman, they were kind of like the Merry Pranksters. If anyone's a fan of the 60s and 70s, Ken Kesey and the Merry Pranksters, they came in a literal school bus named Emily. Um, and they were like a ragtag group of misfits, and they were working on a little platform called the Friendship Agenda, which really no longer exists, but I still love it. I love the name, the Friendship Agenda, the agenda of friendship. It's beautiful. And I feel like I've really been doing that for 10 years to some degree in this visionary troubadour stuff. It's interesting how we just build on some things and some things are still part of our DNA. So I was in New Jersey at the time when they came and saw me in the school bus, and I said, okay, it's time to leave this apartment. So I got in a car with one of the people I met through that, and I drove to Oklahoma with him to see his family. And the next thing I knew, we went to see Nassim Harriman give one of his presentations on Maui uh, right at the beginning of 2012. So I actually spent the famous New Year's 2012 in a teepee, I think, in North Carolina, in Asheville, which was a first for me. And then I went to Maui. And then I came home and I went to Kentucky for a little bit. I met some other people that were trying to start intentional community. So that was the first time I had that experience, so to say, where they had a little bit of land, but trying to build something with really from the ground up with very little resources. Then I went back to Hawaii again. I got to swim with dolphins finally, which was always a dream of mine. And I hung out with some people that knew some of my heroes, like John Lilly, who is a famous dolphin extraordinaire. He's also the guy who invented the isolation tank and some other technologies. And they also knew one of my other heroes named Robert Anton Wilson. So I spent some time in Hawaii there. And that really kicked off this decade of traveling where I eventually met my wife, my now wife, Andrea. And we've traveled the world, but still, to be honest, we still haven't been to really Asia. You know, we've still been mostly Europe, America, Mexico, Rotterdam, France, a brief stop in Australia, to Poznan, Mexico, the UK, Germany. So we still really, it's been quite Western still, so to say, but we've gotten around living really as visionary troubadours in a gift paradigm. And it's just a super long story, but yeah, those are some of the countries I've lived in. And throughout all these travels, I've met awesome people like yourself, Denise, and people who are on the novelty wave, you know, really looking to, as Bucky said, create new systems that make the old ones obsolete, to keep it simple.
Totally awesome. And that's kind of what the wave that we're on together in some of the groups that we share in. So can you tell us a little bit about the gift economy and how you see that, how that's been working for you, how it works in general, and how it's been good for you?
So when we started out, myself, my wife, now Andrea, and our former partner, Chris, the three of us in 2013, we met in Andrea's kitchen in the north of England. And Chris was also from England, but he actually took the train up north. It was the furthest he'd ever gone in England. And he was just coming out of leaving his PhD work and kind of getting guidance. And I think had taken some psychedelics that year. And because he was coming more from a science space, he was in 2 years into a PhD for robotics and like AI. And we met in my now wife's kitchen, and we kind of formed this little project or pod called NOOMAP, NOOMAP, which was based on the idea Chris had for a software. He had a little prototype software at the time called NOOMAP, and we all kind of became nomad in that sense. And we went on this journey, and we knew from the beginning for us it was a spiritual journey as much as it was a journey of producing a technology. And we knew that we didn't really want to take venture capital or have the work be owned by a small group of people in any way, shape, or form, or where people would buy it and then exit or sell it to someone else, et cetera, et cetera. So we were pretty committed from the beginning to living in a gift economy. I had brought a download with me from the beginning of my time in around 2011 called spiritual philanthropy. So I was really into really what I would call a gift paradigm, um, to moving into this gift giving or gift paradigm, even more than an economy, to be honest. But we did start out with this idea of the gift economy, which many people have different definitions. I use the standard sort of wiki, or if you look it up online, it's like a gift economy is kind of giving without expectation of future reward. So for me, it's very simple. It's just like if you went to a friend's birthday party and you brought them a present, if you're being honest, you really wouldn't be expecting them to give you something in return. Like, you're there to celebrate their birthday. You give them the gift unconditionally because you love them and because it feels good for you. So there's something for you in it. It feels great to give a gift. Of course, some people give birthday presents knowing that they're going to get one back, right, the next year. So they kind of do it in that kind of sense. But obviously, we all know the feeling of giving a gift unconditionally because it feels good, without expecting any kind of return on that. So we did that. We have done that. We did that for 7 or 8 years. And I would say on one level, it became apparent to us that what we were trying to do is create a gift paradigm, or a resource-based gift paradigm, that how could you scale a gift economy, so to say? Like, what would be the future of a gift economy? Because on one hand, it's hard. First of all, it's hard because of the current status and because of people's consciousness and how people perceive things, which maybe we'll get into it, come around back to, because it's a good story and it's important. But just to finish on this thought, it was much easier when it was three of us, right? I was the kind of outreach person and our marketer, so to say, and logistics person. So when we would want to go somewhere and work on a part of the project or meet somebody who could help or co-create with, it wasn't so difficult, so to say, saying, hey, there's three of us, can you help us out, like with some travel expenses, or can you put us up, or can you help in this way? And it's one thing when you have three people. It became a different story a few years later when there were 7 of us or 8 of us or 12 of us, to be able to live that way in easily, like in the flow, because now you might be asking someone, can you put 12 of us up, or can you help 12 of us take a plane flight to a conference or something, or crowdfunding, etc. So it became clear that we needed to keep going with trying to design and actually create innovations or tools that would be able to scale something like a gift economy into a lifestyle, into a reality, into a paradigm. So these days, I don't use gift economy much because I want to move away from the box of economy. So I talk about a gift paradigm a lot. And as a note, our projects, which have always worked on this idea of gifting and spiritual philanthropy, and spiritual philanthropy means a love of love, where philanthropy means a love of humanity. So it's a very specific thing. It's not just the word spiritual in front of the word philanthropy. I wrote a 2-page statement about what that means to me. It means a realization of your I, your essential self, instead of a return on investment. So it's a different kind of shift in mindset and investing your whole self into the ground of being, really, instead of a specific project. And it includes money and time and love and all the different ways that people like a gift economy can support anyone or any project. So over the years, we've received or flowed, I would say, 3 or 4 million at least in products, goods, and services, and accommodations, and life-changing experiences, and about 300,000 or 400,000 in actual fiat and currency. So on a small scale, I think we were one of the pioneering groups in this space who, I wouldn't say we're opulent. It's not like we received millions of dollars and 50 million in resources, but we also didn't necessarily struggle and find ourselves homeless or like really whatever. We did a pretty good job walking the talk of living that way. And then now we're on to the next journey, but we still work that way, by the way. We still go with the flow and and are interdependent with our friends and family and people who can um, share resources, really.
So many questions are coming up. It's like, which one do we go with next? Well, I have a few questions. I think one of the main ones would be like, how do you go with the flow? What is going with the flow for you, and for you to discover how you traverse the creations and the makings, and to make it successful for you and your people and your creations?
When I first left my apartment, as I was saying, in around 2011, I first of all what's the word? Rediscovered. I rediscovered Joseph Campbell, who had the famous statement, "Follow your bliss," and I really tuned into that. I wish I could wrap off the top of my head the statement of what he said when he said "follow your bliss," because a lot of people think it just means kind of do whatever you want under any conditions or be selfish or something, but it's not about that. Um, Also, as I said, I went to that Awesomeness Fest, and Vishen, he's moved on from this, but it actually was quite effective for me. He had something called the 6 steps of awesomeness. One of them was know what you want, be in flow, find an embodiment practice, follow your intuition, and find the others. It was something like that, like these 6 kind of bullet points. And it really helped me get out of that mental health funk and have a little bit of a, yeah, yeah, that makes sense. That I can do that, or I can try that. So I would say actually Vishen's 6 steps of awesomeness, along with Joseph Campbell's follow your bliss, is what, and then meeting the guy with the visionary troubadour, all of that kind of added up into the path that I've been on, and that most of us are on. Um, and what does it mean to follow your bliss, really? There's a guy named Bashar, well, a guy named Daryl something, that channels an energy called Bashar, and he has a statement called "Follow your highest excitement to the best of your ability in the now, with no expectations, and whatever you have available to you." That's also become a meme for me. And we also met Barbara Marx Hubbard, who had something called the 7 S's of co-creation, which included synergy and self-creativity, and something called syntony, which is inner knowing and inner guidance. So all of these things have added up to an experience that's hard. So we had a little bit of a technical difficulty there, back live. And I was talking about following your bliss and what that means and what's it like. And my last thought before we got cut off was it's kind of hard to describe in some ways. It's a really experiential type of thing. The best metaphor I can think of is sort of that idea of jumping off the cliff into the abyss. And there's some poem out there or story I know that's kind of famous. It's like when you jump off the abyss, you end up like falling on a bed of feathers or something, or you kind of start floating eventually, compared to just falling and falling and falling or hitting the ground. You end up like finding your floating in a way, like your equilibrium. So um, the key word would be trust, I think. It's about following your bliss, and being in flow is about trusting life and trusting yourself, and which means obviously trusting others. And I think you can make that as easy on yourself or as difficult on yourself as you wish. Um, I know one of the important principles I've learned is that if I look at life conspiring on my behalf, or that life happens for me instead of life happening to me like a victim, that certainly is not always easy, or not always, I'm not always awake to that. Sometimes I kind of nod off and think things are happening to me, or that I'm a victim in that sense. But the principle, I think, is important for being in flow and following your bliss, to trust the universe and trust life, and and really have this meta, at least experiment. I always think we experiment with beliefs. They really shouldn't be something we are locked onto, but that's kind of what magic is about. Like, what happens if I believe this? So that's one of the what happens if I believe this that has proven itself to help to help keep me in the flow, or to help keep me trusting that life happens for me, not to me. And the other one I'll share is my definition of abundance, which I thought a lot about because abundance is a popular word in a lot of our spaces. And I started kind of getting bored with it, so to say, or thinking, what do people really mean when they say that? And I realized that for me, abundance, or at least I was going to try it. What if I believe this? So what if I believe that abundance is getting what I need when I need it? So it's not what I want. First of all, abundance is not getting what I want. And I still think it's good to want things and to have intentions for things. That's not what I'm talking about. You still do that. I think you try to do that without expectation or attachment. But the idea that you get what you need when you need it is different than getting what you want, or having opulence, so to say, as abundance, or having just everything available all the time to you. So getting what you need when you need it is a different mindset. And it doesn't always mean you get everything you wanted. I mean, it could be a breakup in a relationship. It could be being homeless or something, but that's what that, if you look at it as that's, well, I'm getting what I need when I need it, the universe happens for me, then you start shifting your possibilities and thinking, oh, well, maybe I needed to be shaken out of this relationship, or maybe I needed to get a fresh perspective, and that's why I've been given this. And it's really the universe and in whole, or God, or whatever, or spirit, that's why it's abundance in a sense, because spirit always gives you what you need when you need it, if you're kind of surrender to that.
All right, that leads us somewhat into one of the questions I've been really curious about is, well, you talk a lot about how you think, how you feel, what your belief systems are, and how spirit gives you what you need just naturally. So that having a trust in the universe, would you say that's part of what really helped you shift your mind from being bipolar and having somewhat of a spiritual emergency? Did you have a spiritual emergency, and how did you come through that? And how did you change your belief systems? And did the universe provide?
Well, in 1994, I was 19, and I had, depending on your paradigm and your culture, a psychotic episode or a spiritual emergency, right? It depends on really where you're coming from. I think, and I'm not an expert, but from what I can tell, if I happen to have been living in an indigenous community, they might have said, oh my God, he's got a gift. He's having a breakdown to have a breakthrough, right? So this is a person we need to actually mentor and try to help them understand what's happening to them. And maybe they're the kind of person that will eventually become a leader or a visionary or a healing, a medicine man, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't mean to culturally appropriate. I'm not really an expert in that, but it seems clear that something like that is more likely to happen in that culture or that paradigm compared to where I was living in middle-class white New Jersey, well, New York, when this happened. And the first instinct, of course, is that I'm having a psychotic episode. And then they look at your family history. And as soon as your family history shows any type of previous mental illness, and it's like, that's it. You've kind of, the book's been basically written. Now, this is psychiatry in 1994. I have a feeling it really hasn't changed much, to be honest. But so I had this episode in 1994, and I got put in a hospital, had a terrible experience there. I got put in a clinic, terrible experience there. And basically from age 19 to 30, minus a couple years where I kind of recovered, then I kind of went through this thing again. And I basically ended up in the psychiatric ward of the hospital like 6 times in my 20s for psychotic episodes or psychosis, which of course they told me that the more times it happened, the more I was going to deteriorate, which clearly was a lie, or a misunderstanding on their part. And of course, they feel like you have an illness. That's it. It's in your DNA. It's genetic. Just get used to it. Take your medications. That's how you're going to be the rest of your life. So I did have a dark decade of the soul. I like to joke around. It was not a dark night. It was a whole gosh darn decade. And it was it was whatever I needed to go through, I suppose. I'm a really stubborn person. Clearly, I needed to wanted to learn a lesson and become maybe an expert, an organic expert in mood disorder. And I call it the bipolar experience, by the way. One of the most important things is the semantics, and the labels that cause problems. So I call it having a bipolar experience because I did go up and down. I do seem to have a personality and an archetype that swings and goes up and down. So it's all about managing that and creating a lifestyle that really fit me. That rather than trying to just cure it, like black and white, just cure it. I'm not sure if that's really what the method should be about curing it. So I had a really rough decade. I put my time in with a lot of depression. I mean, I was suicidal for many years, I would think, and living by myself. And a lot of people that meet me now wouldn't believe probably that I went through that, or that I was in a psychiatric ward 6 times, or that I was in these social day programs like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest or Girl Interrupted. It's really like that. And I was really in these places, like, it's finding myself in these places but there's a lot of wisdom there and a lot of learning of non-judgment and unconditional things. And I was with different races and different ages and different genders and people with different kinds of problems. And I had to sit in circles with them and be part of that environment. So I certainly learned a lot. So it took a long time for me. I mean, I'm probably one of the luckier people. My family was much more supportive, even though they weren't new paradigm or hippies in any way. They thought the hospitals and the medications were the only answer, but at least they were kind and generous and middle class enough to help support me when I needed extra money or things like that, or so I could have a car or get the medical help I needed, etc. A lot of people in these situations, their families leave them behind. They can't handle the psychiatric ward stuff, let alone the actual experience of having a loved one who's going through that experience. So it took me a long time. I started getting better around age 30. I went back to school for a couple of years for psychosocial rehabilitation. I thought I wanted to go into the kind of business of helping people with mental health. But that really turned out to not be what I wanted to do, even though I learned a lot of cool stuff. And from that point on, I kind of just started getting my feet back underneath me again. And part of that was having to stop smoking weed all the time, like at least for a little while, like because I was basically taking psychiatric drugs and smoking weed. And I think it was really bad weed, to be honest. Like I was getting it from the inner city. And I have a feeling I kept crossing paths with some stuff that was like laced with some angel dust or something like that. So that's always like word of advice to anyone. And if you're like this, like, and you're going to do drugs, at least fucking know where you get them from and, and be clear about that. So I kind of got sick and tired of being sick and tired, as the saying goes. And I said, well, I can't keep taking all these drugs and smoking weed. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's affecting what. I've got to like try something else. So I stopped smoking weed, and then I started tapering off the drugs myself, because the psychiatrists are useless, in my opinion, for the most part. They don't give a shit about you. They care about getting you fixed and getting you back to getting a job and being a responsible citizen. They have no interest really in your soul. And of course, I'm sure there's exceptions out there, but as an industry, it's pretty lousy. And they're not out there to help you follow your bliss, so to say, or find your soul's purpose and make that transformation part of your recovery. They're mostly just putting band-aids on things. Not to mention they don't even understand mental illness, and they give you a bunch of drugs that don't really work and are misguided. So I had to learn to be my own psychiatrist. I had to learn to stand up to my family and the doctors, and I had to learn that if I needed to do it on my own without telling them, and honestly become a good liar. Because if I wanted to survive, I needed to keep some things to myself, to be honest. Because if I tried to get what I needed or get what I wanted from the situation and from my family, they would just resist that and say, well, that's what someone who's bipolar says. I don't want to take my medicines, or I don't need medicines, etc. So it was a long journey. And then, like I said, I met these new friends when I was 37, and I haven't taken a psychiatric drug since then. And since I've spoken so long, I haven't really answered your question in depth, but it's all about those 6 steps of awesomeness to me, actually. And what I did was I came to stop resisting or flowing upstream and learn that I could try to create a lifestyle that fit me rather than trying to cure myself. So what I did is I found people that were very loving and unconditional. And I found people that if we were working on a project and I took a month and I couldn't work so much because I was what I used to call depressed, they wouldn't say you're fired or that you're not worthy or that you should go take medicines. I found people, I found creativity that meant I didn't have to get up at 9 o'clock every morning and work 40 hours a week. These kind of things were not conducive to my sanity. They're not conducive to most people's sanity when you really get down to it. So creating a new life for yourself based on your own, like you said, what new beliefs and what new ideas. And the last thing I'll share is shifting little things can make the biggest difference. So at some point I realized, wait a second, why do I have to call it depressed when I feel like tired and like I'm integrating a lot of things and I don't feel like super creative? Like that doesn't, I don't have to call that depressed. I could say, well, it's winter and like I like to not do things for a couple months. I want to integrate the last 9 months. Maybe I need time to reflect and contemplate. Is that really depression? So I mean, sometimes it kind of is in a sense. Like if you're clinically, like there's a difference between not being able to get out of bed and reframing your experience, but it keeps improving upon itself. So now it's like my mood swings would be like, I consider them, they're like this, they're compressed. Like instead of going super manic or super clinically depressed, I'm more like in this boundary of effectiveness, and I can still taste some of the benefits of the more extreme states of being that are known as mental illness. So like if I want to taste the gift of psychosis, let's say, or the gift of mania, or the gift of clinical depression, I can do that without diving fully into that story. So the most important thing I always said, if there's a cure to bipolar, it's being detached. It's simply being detached from the story of you, so you can have a little bit of space to say, wait, I'm not bipolar. I'm having a bipolar moment. I'm not mania. I'm experiencing mania right now. And when you detach from your narrative, then you are able to get some perspective, and you're able to be more of, they say, a witness to the mood swings instead of the impulsiveness. I feel like bipolar, especially, it's almost like an impulsive disorder. So you get depressed and you follow that. Or you get a synchronicity or a message to run around naked and like go outside and wait for aliens to land. And instead of stepping back from that and thinking, wait a second, is this what I really want to do? And then go do it. But when you're in the midst of what I call a mania or whatever, you kind of get these signals and these impulses or synchronicities, and you're just like, well, if it's that, I must do that. And then you just follow that impulse. You don't have any equanimity around it. It's just like, this is what's real and I'm going to do it. So I always said, if people want to cure bipolar, go find some kind of way to get detachment. So I use the spiritual practice of the Eastern path of non-duality, where you ask yourself, who am I? That was my yoga, basically, because I was so obsessive compulsive and manic with my thoughts that using a technique that I could be obsessive with in order to gain some insight into myself was my best tool, compared to trying to do stretching yoga or become an entrepreneur. I don't know. People have different ways of getting an embodiment practice. So that was the one that worked for me. But overall, I would always recommend people find a way to become more detached from their own narrative, and then they'll find some freedom.
Wow, so many nuggets in there. So true. Detachment, non-duality, impulsiveness, center of self, 6 ways of awesomeness, which I want to write that down. I want to remember what that is, because I haven't remembered myself. So hopefully I'll get that. And then, the gift of a breakdown is to get to know what's going on in multiple cultures, so that you can understand what people actually need. And wow, the center, the core of yourself is what I always work with. It's like, who am I? What's my purpose? Where am I going? Like, it's because does it fit that reality framework that I'm creating for myself? And for flow, like if you have intention and then you go for the intention, and a part of the intention, okay, yeah, I want to be intentionally hanging out with aliens right now. I have a day off. Why not? But also it talks about the circadian rhythms and your personal rhythms. Like, are we supposed to have the technological time frame? Are we supposed to be on the farmer's diet? with the sun 100%. A lot of us are not even connected to that. We're connected to electronic time of like, that's what I'm putting into the book. So this thing about the spiritual emergency and the who am I, that you found your own way to find yourself or discover detachment, because there's multiple kinds of meditations and yogas that will help you do that. For me, it's meditation that's really helped me do that, really seeing what's going on in the network of my body. So to give a breakdown, excuse me, I was a little bit sick yesterday, so that had me sit down and just relax and rest after.
You're breaking up a little. You're breaking up a little.
Obviously, there's construction going on here, a lot of noise with people. I'm in Tulum, Mexico. Let me see what I wanted to ask you here. Yeah, you were lucky to have the support of people, having you had the support of people when you were in the gift paradigm. So who are these people and why did they support you? And then I want to talk about Togetherland after this. So
who are these people and why did they support us? Yeah, I'm really glad you asked, because on some level we don't get asked that a lot, and then it can get lost. So you've given me an opportunity to say thank you, first of all, to all of those people who I may not name clearly at the moment, but to all of the people that have been part of our story. It's the only thing that made it possible. Like, there is no Bret, really, actually, and there is no Bret being married and sort of happy enough and on this journey contributing and all that without the support and love and gifts of everyone along the way. I mean, Andrea and I had a spontaneous wedding at the Uplift Festival in 2014. We were gifted flights there and a place to stay for a couple weeks, and they have this pre-event leading up to the actual festival. And I had basically asked Andrea to marry me in our room the night before. I said, "Do we have to wait, for anything else, or can we just be married?" And I had a ring because I had been wanting to ask her. And then the next day we told our friend, and she said, "Oh my God, you have to tell everyone." And the next thing we know, we had a 2-hour spontaneous wedding, and there was a preacher there, and there was music there, and there was people there. The grandmothers were there. Bruce Lipton was there. Some of our friends were there. So we had this. So there's an example of just this amazing gift that was given to us, and people all chipping in something. Like, the person who actually funded us to go there obviously put a lot of money to bring our project out there to have us meet people. But then the people that gave us gifts there and who sang songs during this wedding, those are gifts, we have a really core group of really a lot of women actually in the UK. My wife is from the UK. So when we first started this journey, as I was saying, our former partner Chris is from the UK and Andrea is from the UK. So we spent a lot of time here and we met some new friends, and they've been massively important helpers in many ways. They've given us healing sessions. They've given us they've connected us to people. They've put us up in their houses. They've donated money, picked us up from airports, and there's people all around the planet. We had a couple guys in Rotterdam. We lived there for a year and a half and did this experiment called the Synergy Hub. And this guy got this building, a 30,000 square meter building, so a bunch of us could live on a floor for a year. And he showed up every day. The people, there's just amazing people. I mean, my parents as well, and Andrea's family. So there's heroes everywhere as far as people who have actually gifted different types of things. And that's what spiritual philanthropy is. Spiritual philanthropy is giving whatever you are able to give, because it feels good and because you care about things. So the list is endless, and it's been amazing. I never stop remembering or being grateful for all of the support we've been given. And then why do people do it? Number one, people do it because people have goodness in their hearts. Um, People like to help other people, and people also like to be part of a story. People like to support people who have jumped off that cliff. People can appreciate pioneers, you know? People can appreciate people that are taking risks. So they want to help because of that. And then lastly, of course, people want to see the innovations come alive that we've been looking to bring to life.
So looks like we have 10 more minutes. Oh, here we go.
Yep. Hmm?
And you were saying?
Oh, yeah, I was just saying, I was just finishing that the other reason people help, number one, is because people are good people. People like to help people. People have goodness in their hearts. People like to support people who are taking risks. I think people like to support people who are being pioneering and doing their best to walk the talk of their talk. And then finally, people supported because they want to see the innovations and realities come to be that we have been working on or designing or living or invoking, from the field of potential. So those are the three major reasons why people help. One, they want to see the stuff happen. Two, people are good in their hearts and like to support people who take risks, and they like to be part of a story. And we've been a fun story in that sense.
So how do you share that story and find these people, and what do you say to them?
We've been all grassroots, really. We've never done a big crowdfunding or a big media campaign. We were usually having too much fun. Fun meaning also the hard stuff. I'll say not like all easy, so to say, but I'm just saying it is kind of fun even to be in the muck of transformation or or difficulties. It's still kind of fun if you care about evolution and your personal growth. It's kind of even the stuff that might other people might think is nasty or weird or whatever. It's still kind of fun, really, if that's what your game is. Um, so we were always having so much fun in the midst of that it was hard to stop, and like none of us were really super passionate about standard marketing, so to say. I mean, we're all good communicators and former even marketers, but we just were really involved in doing our research and design and having a good time. And based on the, like I said, of the seven S's of co-creation, things like synchronicity and spontaneity. So synchronicity and spontaneity were two more of the S's of the seven S's. So we really we really practiced being in the now and following synchronicity and spontaneity. So honestly, as you probably have experienced, and a lot of us that are nomads, things show up when they need to show up, or they show up at the last second or in the nick of time. So what we did was we communicated really in a natural, authentic way. I mean, I was the biggest communicator because I like to communicate and I like to talk and I like social media. So I would just share myself and network really mostly on Facebook. Yeah, I don't really like some of the other stuff. So mostly using Facebook as a tool. Um, just by organically communicating and people using word of mouth, the next thing would always happen. And then we'd be involved in something for a year or 6 months or 18 months or 3 months, and then the next thing would show up. So we haven't done a big public or traditional any kind of marketing. It's always just been word of mouth.
So kind of like a magical flow based
Yeah.
on purpose. Would you say that you have had a purpose and that you've honed in on your purpose more and more, or has it always been the same? Can you tell us about your purpose?
Um yeah, I think there is I think underneath it all, no matter what innovation or creativity or productivity we've been looking at or involved in, the number one motivation slash purpose slash intention is conscious evolution, personal growth, um, finding and discovering our essential self, and then living from that. So that is definitely the bedrock purpose, I would say, of everyone I really hang out with and create with. We all want to manifest certain expressions in the world, or certain technologies or lifestyles, but really I think the purpose is the same purpose as life might have, so to say, or the universe. The purpose is to expand and to be creative and to live and learn and laugh and love. I actually, if I'm being honest, I believe that is our purpose. That has been our purpose, to continue finding ourselves, and then iterating on that, to use our software language, to iterate on ourselves and to find the next greatest version. I mean, I think that came from conversations with God, actually. I think I remember it used to be in the books. It's like, find the next greatest version of yourself and then go from there, and then find the next greatest version of yourself and go from there. And all of that has been entwined with systems design and software design and social architectures, for the most part, in the sense of creating a new world, creating a new reality, not just creating a new website or a new way to do one thing. So our purpose in this sense has always been to make co-creation possible at scale. And how would you make and when I say co-creation, I kind of mean something specific, but it is what it is. I mean, people will take it as they take it, some form of collaboration, even though I mean it's something a little different. But that's our purpose. Our purpose is to bring co-creation to life, at scale, because we believe that a paradigm of co-creation, because of its essence and nature and principles, is the most fun and life-serving uh, adventure that we could go on. And that if there was a world of co-creation and all humans were co-creating instead of competing, and sharing instead of keeping, and loving instead of hating, and all these different things, and it's really becoming a non-dual planet, so to say. But that's the game. The game is, for us, is, and the purpose is co-creation. And how do we live that, and then how do we create the necessary and sufficient conditions and tools so that could happen at a large scale.
Awesome. So would you say there's a planetary mythos arising from all of this? You're talking about co-creation, life-serving adventure that we could go on. Competing is not the way. Instead, co-creation and sharing and loving, instead of all this fearful, low energy stuff that we've been living on this planet. What would you say the planetary mythos is? And also, for anyone starting this, let's start with the planetary mythos. And I have two more questions, because I still want to ask about Togetherland, and I want to ask also about what would you tell people that are going on this journey anew. But please talk about the planetary mythos, and then what you would say to people that are going into this journey anew, and then let's talk about Togetherland.
I think, because of my non-dual proclivities, there's kind of two ways of looking at it. One, everything is all good, no matter what happens on the planet. And I mean what appears to be the best of things or the worst of things, that it is what it is, and it's perfect the way it is on some level. On the level of manifestation, on the level of like expression, in the here and now, so to say, and in our faces, in our day-to-day activities, with respect to dogma, my own dogma, and remaining open, I'm convinced personally, based on experience, I would say, that there is something happening, quote unquote, that the universe, or God, or the field, what people have different words, or the life itself actually has a purpose it wants to fulfill. It has a dream, so to say. And that dream that purpose or dream may um, it may be grounded in a type of free will, so people can choose to do things that I don't resonate with, or what we call evil, or violence, or watching people starve and poverty. All these things, I think those things are possible because there seems to be some sense of the free will that makes it all worthwhile. Um, and but even though there's free will, I feel personally like evolution or the universe or God wants to have a certain experience, this experience of like bliss and prosperity and ultimate freedom and creativity, and everyone having what they need when they need it. For speaking of abundance, you know, and uh, and just freedom. This is the best word I can think of, but it's just not your mama's freedom, not like freedom from oppression, but ultimate freedom, some kind of really heavy duty, like next level consciousness. I don't know. There's so many different ways to describe it, but I do believe there's a pull. I think some people use the word like strange attractor, or if you think of the singularity and gravity in a black hole. So for me, speaking poetically, I think there's a black hole that's not made out of matter, but it's a black hole of intention. It's a black hole of desire and intention, like you're saying, purpose, and it's filled with like love and creativity and goodness. And it's actually like, whether people believe it or not, it's almost true to me. Like, you don't have to believe that narrative, but don't be surprised in 5 years or 10 years or 100 years if we're not living in the kind of world that I'm talking about, because I'm a visionary in that way. We all are. I mean, I'm a prophet in that way. I think there's actually, yes, that's the mythos. I mean, that's what's happening. And I think the memes of co-creation, regenerativeness, regeneration, the regenaissance. I'm part of the design science studio. They use the word regenaissance, you know, ecology, physics. Everyone's pointing at very similar things, even if they call it something different. So co-creation for us is about interconnection in the unified field. But physicists are coming to realize that. You know, the ecologists and the environmental people are talking about how everyone is part of the same planet, you know, or the same organism. So I think there is a mythos, and it's no different than anything else, right? In different decades and different centuries, there's the Bronze Age, right? And this age, and then this age. So for me, the new mythos is the age of co-creation, and it will have a zenith. It will have this zenith or singularity point, and I don't know what happens after that. Do we go back into another age where it's boring and everyone falls asleep again, or we kill each other? I don't know. There's always something new, right, under the sun. um, but at the moment, for me, that is the mythos, and it's not just in my own mind. I mean, if I look around at the artists and the innovators from all different disciplines and all different religious or cultural backgrounds, everyone is still, there is a subset of people who are vibing on something that feels similar, even if we have different names for it. And I think that's the new mythos that's happening for sure.
For sure, a subset of people are vibing on some sort of new idea of planetary co-creation, love, revolution, evolution, evolutionary humanity. It seems like a lot of people are definitely doing it in multiple different ways. So tell us a little bit about Togetherland. And I feel like that's a project that has this mythos embedded in there, and it's to help people come together somehow in this co-creative process.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I started off with Andrea and Chris on our project called New Map, which was evolving into a co-creation platform, and it got deeper than we had assumed when we first started. It was more sophisticated and a deeper thing that we thought we were doing. So we went on the road less traveled to learn about new things. That what do people think about this new democracy and governance, and how do you share resources, and how do you do personal growth, all these different elements of a whole system. So now, like Bucky Fuller said, you can't just fix one piece of the tapestry. It's about systemic change and whole systems change. How does education affect transportation, and how does transportation affect justice? And all of these different sectors and disciplines and realities and mediums have to be working together as one whole organism. Even if there's autonomy and sovereignty within each of the parts, there's still like this greater whole being created. So we ended up currently, that system or that blueprint, that architecture, that blueprint for for a platform or a reality or vehicle or something. It's called the Together Life System. So I've been working on that for 8 or 9 years, and I've been doing a lot of systems design and architecture and social architecture and software kind of related things. And none of that was really why I was born, so to say, or was my deepest, deepest, deepest passion. I loved every minute of it. I still do. I still contribute to it. But what happened was, um, last year I was watching the last 3 minutes of a movie called Tomorrowland, which was a 2015 Disney film. So the movie I don't care so much about, but I happened to watch the last 3 minutes again last year of the final scene, and I just thought it was epic. I get goosebumps now. I watched it 100 times, and I still actually get goosebumps. And in the final 3 minutes of this movie, the children kind of have rescued the world, so to say. And George Clooney says to them, you know, it's your job now to go out and find the others, the ones that haven't given up on the future. And they leave Tomorrowland and they go through this portal, and this music starts playing, and it's a beautiful montage, and they're giving these tokens for Tomorrowland out, and they're finding people, all ages, all genders, like a ballerina, a chemist, a 3D printer, an animal activist, and a man, a woman, a black person, a white person. And this final montage is these people being given tokens, like sort of secretly, like they find it under their folder, or they find it in their busking thing, and they're all different ages, and they're all going and they're reaching for this token. And when they all pick up the token, they all wake up in this cornfield, and they look up, and you see all these different people, different genders and different races, and they're all in this one cornfield of Tomorrowland, so to say, where what if all of these people came together with no greed and no bureaucracy to create the world that they wanted to live in? You know, all the mystics and the scientists and the poets and the artists and all that. So I saw that last 3 minutes called Tomorrowland. We're working on the Together Life System. And I thought to myself, I always wanted to make movies, but it seems like a two-dimensional screen was not really going to be big enough for someone as ambitious as me, maybe. I don't know. So I thought, I want to make a sequel to the last 3 minutes of Tomorrowland, but I don't want to make a movie. I want to make a reality. I want this to be like in real time, interactive, immersive. What if we took off from this last 3 minutes and we had Togetherland? So we had the co-creative system with the narrative, a new story of Tomorrowland, where people can create the world they want to live in. So in essence, Togetherland. So back there it says this is not a movie for fun. So in alternate reality games, this genre, one of the key elements is saying that this is not a game. So the people that are playing an alternate reality game go around saying this is not a game. So I kind of picked up on that because Togetherland ultimately is a type of alternate reality game. But really, Togetherland's it's a vehicle for planetary transformation. Really, it's incorporating a few key concepts. I'll go really quick. I consider myself a concept architect, so I care about the infrastructure or the main concepts that can then be built out really by other people in co-creation. So there's three main concepts of Togetherland. One is called transmedium production. So instead of transmedia, we're used to transmedia being internet technologies and blogs and digital communication. But I was like, wait a second, what about all the mediums? And if you look up the word medium, governance is a medium, really. Science is a medium, and permaculture is a medium. So I was like, what if you have all of these? It's synergy again, right? Co-creation. I just put a different name on it for myself because I was excited. I was like, oh, transmedium. I want to go across mediums and go beyond mediums. The other pillar is regenerative filmmaking. So I was like, if I want to create an immersive, interactive story that creates real sets, quote unquote, and real locations, and instead of making a fake movie with fake props, with a fake set about a fake awesome future, why wouldn't I just want to spend $500 million to make an event or an experience that uses all that money to build 100 cities that feed 1,000 people and create opportunities and fund actual innovations and aquaponics and energy devices as the actual props in the movie, and then we can blast it out as documentaries. That's why it's not a movie. So Togetherland's a real life. It's a concept and a narrative that allows us to have an interactive. It's rebranding Earth, to be honest. I realized I'm so ambitious. I wanted to rebrand Earth Togetherland. So that's the world I want to live in. I want to live in a world where people are like in their favorite movie, and even if they go see a movie and they see a technology in that movie, they don't go home thinking, wow, that was cool, I wish I could do that. No, they go home and they log in to the technology, or they go visit that place. They don't, you live on this set. So it's all about blurring all the lines and all that. So people are responding well to the concept, the overall. Clearly, when you tell everyone, what if we spend $500 million on this instead of making an Avengers movie, and we use the money to basically fund a new paradigm, and then we could even make money if we wanted to by having ecotourism, and because people would want to live on the set, and we'd grow food and as part of the movie, and then it's like, yeah, of course, like of course that's the next thing to do, so it's in early stages in that sense, but that's the general. And the third component is infinite reality instead of XR, right? XR is simulated and mixed reality. So again, what happens when we transcend include? Like, it's, to me, it's almost, it's the positive version of transhumanism or singularity. When you combine nanotechnology and AI with permaculture and indigenous wisdom and blockchain and holochain and permaculture and robotics and governance, what happens when you combine all those things? Then you've got something, to me, that's synergistic, it's emergent, it's novel, I call it XRI instead of extended reality, it's infinite reality. So yeah, regenerative filmmaking, transmedia production, and infinite reality. And so Togetherland is that massively like what I want to do. And now it's a matter of finding some way to have a first instance of that, and then empowering all of the creative people to really make it come alive. I don't really want to tell any specific story. It can be operas, it can be activism, it can be businesses. Everything is a part of Togetherland, so to say. It's more important that we're co-creating this regenerative, amazing world that Togetherland would stand for. Yeah.
Wow, yeah, to talk about the positive transcendence, or the nanoculture and the indigenous, like, we are having technology, it does exist, it's not going away. You can't put a stop to it.
No.
It's like, well, what do we do with it? How do we curb that? So people like us were like, okay, it's happening. Yeah, I've got a phone, you've got a phone. And back in the day, people were rejecting the phones, like when I was talking about this, and like these back to the earth people, and now they all have phones and things like that. So and I was talking to them about how everything was going to be on media. Everyone's going to be they've got the biggest Instagram followings of people who I talked to this about, they were like, you're ridiculous, and they were like fighting me about it, so. And that's kind of where it's at with like nano culture and all this other parts. It's like people are like, it's ridiculous, and it's really about the integration and what the human values and what part we're going to take. So and enjoy and live this life in the co-creation. So I really appreciate specifically how you're talking about rebranding the earth, because that is like, how do we have it? In my grad school, we were talking about enchanting earth, or like bring the ancient and the future coming together, being your future self. I love how you're saying that, being your future self, the iteration, the growing into that. So we will get a whole discussion on its own.
Oh, you broke up. We are back again.
The first iteration of Togetherland, what can that be? What would that you love to see that be?
Ideally, it would be 100. It would be having 100 acres, and building the first epicenter, really, that I call Syntonia. So this would be a demonstration center of a lot of the different technologies, physical and community technologies, ways of living. It would be a visitor center. It would also be a broadcast center, and I'd want to have a lot of like live streaming in different places, kind of like a Big Brother type thing. And then I want to include AI for editing. I've got a real big intuitive feeling that when AI starts interacting with footage, that it's going to be able to like spin out new stories with the same footage, and it will know how to like take key parts of live streaming and then spit out like webisodes. Like I'm really interested to work with video and AI, and like directors and actors and stuff. So that's ideal. Like the first instance where we just land and we're like, bam, like, you know, the home of the first home of Togetherland, and we're kind of doing all this experimentation, and it is the place that they spoke about in Tomorrowland. So what if all of the mystics and the scientists and the artists came together without greed or bureaucracy and had a chance to create the world that they imagine? So really, it would just be literally almost taking over from that last from that last scene. What happens when we bring all those people together and they don't have limitations with like annoying budgets and people telling them what they can't do, and they're just given the tools that they need and a good family of people, and they're able to get on with just creating all these new things and then demonstrating those to the world, and then from there just having different expressions. Like I call it like fractaling, I guess, instead of franchising, right? Kind of like a fractaling of Togetherland. So people just make it their own in their own vision, in their own way. They do, if they agree with the values and intentions, and they want to kind of co-create just on that level. It's up to them to make their chapter or their version of it, so to say. But that would be like if you said, what do you want to do that's kind of feasible but not in your immediate ability to manifest. Like, you know, I'd love to get like 10 million, 5 million, 20, whatever, just so I can, like, it wasn't hard to actually just land and start building earthships and installing the video system and bringing people in and giving them the materials they need and the quality food and growing all the food. That would be the first thing I'd want to do. Until that happens, I mean, I'm in a lot of conversations with different people who get the gist of it and are thinking, well, how can they incorporate aspects of it in what they're doing? Or, oh, I want to help make that happen. So I'm kind of in early stages, you know, here and there with people, but nothing has popped yet because I don't really look for funding in normal ways. And like, I don't want to make a business plan and all that stuff. I'm a creative person at heart, really. So as long as I'm being creative, I'm actually quite satisfied. Um, I do want to manifest it, but I'm also quite happy just being a creative person. So I'm gonna let it flow until it manifests. I guess I'm stubborn. I don't know, I'm a Capricorn, you know. I want it to manifest the way it's supposed to manifest. I don't really want to compromise, like, or do something I don't want to do, like in order to do it. And that, because then I'm not really doing what I say I do. So yeah, we'll see what's next. Oh, it looks like you're frozen again. It'd be a good broadcast.
Oh, okay. Great. So I think we're just about done. That's a great, I think you had a great talk about what you would imagine being the first instance. And again, it always brings up so many more questions, but I do want to finalize this. And do you feel like you answered the question, what would you recommend for a new earth nomad? And even if that new earth nomad was a spiritual philanthropist or just a nomad going out on the road, maybe you have suggestions of what would be good for both of them, or just hone in on one, whatever you're feeling right now.
It's so funny because, like I said, that guy Vishen Lakhiani who came up with those 6 step of awesomeness, it's literally a million miles in his rear view mirror. Like he's gone on to do all these things with Mind Valley. It's got to be the most it would be the most boring thing in the world for him to talk about. It's like something he painted, you know, like 10 years ago. And it's not something I talk about all the time. It's just that literally whenever someone asks me, what advice would you give to people? Also because I want to keep it simple, so to say, I'm always like, dude, go read those 6 steps to awesomeness. Go read a couple quotes from the Joseph Campbell. And because one of the steps in the 6 step to awesomeness is find the others. I mean, it's a different wording. So my best advice I've always ever given is, one, you have to take risk. If you're not willing to take a risk, whatever that means to you, like living with less money or not knowing where your next meal is coming from, or disappointing your mom and dad, or whatever it is, if you're not willing to risk your perception of yourself and how society looks at you, then it's not for you. In a sense, you've got to be able to at least in small baby steps, you have to confront your discomforts, or gamble. I mean, just gamble. You have to take some chances and take some risks. So that's number one. I don't know how else to say that. Like, the only, what I feel good about in saying that is because I've done it. I know people that have done it, and you're not going to die. Like, you're not going to end up homeless. You're not going to end up broken. You're not going to end up without uh, income or something like that. Like, but you have to try. And finding others that it's like, I mean, it's nothing different than what entrepreneurs would say, right? Like, if you want to learn something, you go find the people that have done what you want to do. They made $1 million, they made funnels, and it's not my thing, but I mean, it's really not much different than that. Like, go find mentors and other people that have done the things that you want to do, and talk to them and learn from them, and try to join them on some level and try to learn. And that's the best advice I can give.
There we are. I really appreciate your patience, because I'm obviously taking a risk by being on a location that doesn't have very good Wi-Fi, but I understand that. I appreciate that you understand that. So yeah, taking the, finding the others, being an entrepreneur, and working with people that are in your realm. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, that you would do that if you wanted to make $1 million and you were a traditional entrepreneur. You'd say, well, let me go learn from Joe Schmo about what he did to become a millionaire, and learn all of his little tips and secrets, or I'd go work for that person. So it's the same difference here. If you want to be a global nomad living in the flow of co-creativity, following your bliss, living on your own terms, then go find other people that are doing that, and find a way to join them, then be willing to take risks, and confront yourself and confront your assumptions, and learn that way. How else can you do it, I guess, but jumping in? That's the best advice I can honestly give.
Looks like my internet has gone back out, or is it's going in and out still, but I really appreciate this interview. This is really inspiring me. Like, I'm okay, this one's going on YouTube as soon as you download it, or I download it from you and get it over to there. So this is amazing, your friendship. And for me, discovering you was kind of like, finding the people that are out there within the realm that I'm in. So a lot of us have come together on Awaken Dream Synergy and multiple Zoom groups during the pandemic, and discovered each other, and discovered support network, and discovered our ways that we're going to be working with ourselves and with each other. And it was so beautiful to hear about you and Andrea getting married. Unfortunately, I didn't make the Zoom meeting because I didn't get the telegram on time, but it's all good, and I'm happy to know that you guys are out there, and that someday maybe we can have that retreat. We do know people that have lands all the time, but it's about being able to populate the lands with these eco-domes or star houses and proper water, and then the technology and the Wi-Fi. That really is quite a large dream, quite a creation. I personally would rather just go somewhere that's already built at this point, because I've already tried building and in my nomadic risk-taking experience. So for me, I just want to get to the point and make the creations of healing the consciousness. And so I appreciate what you have to offer and give, and may it happen, may it be so, and may I come join you. Yeah.
Right on.
In my nomadic rounds, go to one of your headquarters.
Yeah. Thanks for being you.
Yeah. Thank you. So wonderful, Bret. I guess this is New Earth Nomads TV going on. That sounds good to put this on YouTube. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm happy. Just, I mean, you need to put a message up that the we were a little in and out, and our video quality sucks, and all that other good stuff.
And my mic quality sucks.
Yeah, all of that sucks, but it was still a good conversation. So it's I'll send you the video. You can do whatever you like with it.
Okay, great. Thank you for recording. And that's what happens. We will up the abilities over time. I mean, look at my headphones, they're falling apart, but I love these headphones. So
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Lots of love.
Okay. Well, thank you, Bret. Love, and we'll
Bye.
talk soon. Take care.